Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. Hello, welcome back to Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. Welcome to another NRL news reaction where we go through all of the news that is currently coming across my desk in terms of NRL, what's happening around the league. And there's some big updates. Now, we obviously talked on the podcast before about Stefano Utoikamanu, about his situation. My mail was that he was locked in. He was going to Melbourne. It was going to be announced later in the week. That has since changed. Eels enter the race, and the Bulldogs, well, it sounds like the Bulldogs, according to NRL 360 and other mail that I've received, that the Bulldogs, they're going to announce the signing on Friday. So there's definitely a lot of mail around Stefano Utoikamanu. I don't know what to believe. Obviously, Buzz, as I said, brought it up on NRL 360 that it sounds like the Dogs are going to announce the signing of Stefano Utoikamanu on Friday, but we'll have to wait and see. That's just a prediction from him. We'll have to wait and see if that mail is correct. But obviously a very popular man at the moment, it seems like, with 3 clubs already going after him. He already had a bunch of other clubs going after him earlier in the season when the talks about him being off contract were beginning. The reason that a lot of clubs, it seemed, that were getting turned off by Stefano was because of the asking price. It looked like he was asking for a little bit too much, obviously around the 800, 900K mark and above, which at the moment, we've sort of spoken about it already on the podcast. Stefano, he just isn't that guy yet. He isn't the $1 million front rower. And I just don't think that any club really, other than the Tigers, who we've obviously seen, offered him a 4-year, $1 million per season deal, it sounds like. That's the only club that's really going to offer him that deal. I can understand as well why, he wants to leave the Tigers. They're, 3 in a row now with the spoon, similar to Penrith's premiership winning record. The West Tigers, they seem to be getting a similar record here with the wooden spoon, which sort of isn't the best thing to boast about. But, I can understand why he wants to leave that environment. He wants to find somewhere new. I think if you have the right intentions, as a Stefano Utoikamanu, I think the Bulldogs and the Melbourne Storm, they're both the best options. Look at Melbourne right now. Overachieving with the team that they've had all year. They've been without Jerome Hughes. They've been without Ryan Pappenhausen. And they've been without Munster throughout certain parts of the year. Harry Grant as well being out during the origin periods. They've been out without most of their stars. I think it was the first time last week that all 4 of their spine players in Pappy, Munster, Hughes, and Grant played together. So they've been without all of their stars for majority of the year. For them to have done what they've done, them to be first on the ladder this season, it is quite bizarre and it is quite unbelievable as well, what they've managed to achieve. Obviously, with them going with their full squad for the next few weeks, it's just going to be unfathomable what they are going to achieve as well. You'd lock in them pretty much being the minor premiers, and I'd almost lock in Big Jerome Hughes as the Dally M halfback of the year as well. And I think that he could win the Dally M award as well by the end of the year. He has had an unbelievable season. And in terms of consistency, he's been the best, most consistent most consistent player, in my opinion, in the competition this season. So wouldn't shock me in the slightest if he does get the Dally M player of the year. But I think halfback of the year is certainly already in his pocket, even at this stage of the season, as we do have a few more weeks before we do get into the final series. But Jerome Hughes, for me, he's pretty much locked into that Dally M halfback of the year award. That's the sort of environment you're walking into at Melbourne. You then look at the Bulldogs. You've got a side that has, again, overachieved this season. They were the worst defensive side last year. They're now the second best defensive outfit going into this season, obviously with some real star recruits, whether it be Critter's leadership coming into this side, Kurt Mann playing a perfect utility role, the young Bailey Hayward, they're blooding their juniors really well. Gus Gould magic sprinkling across this Bulldog side. Serraldo's coaching, coming from a winning environment at the Panthers. He's pretty much sprinkled a little bit of that magic in that system around the Bulldogs with the help of Phil Gould, and they've turned that team into a real powerhouse. But not only that, just the work rate of the players as well, the environment they're building down there within the playing group. It is really turning into a great club, and a lot of young guys, I imagine, no matter how the end of the season goes, are going to want to become a part of that journey, become a part of the premiership winning dynasty. We could get at the Bulldogs over the next few years. So those are the two environments that he's currently looking at, Stefano Utoikamanu, and obviously we're going to get a decision, you'd think, by the end of the week. Now, as I said, my mail was at the start of the week that Melbourne had signed him already, that it was done. Obviously, that mail was incorrect because now the Bulldogs are pretty much confirmed to have signed him by Friday. That, we've heard that the Eels are now entering the race as well. It's really just went pear-shaped very, very quickly, and more teams are joining the race. The Roosters dropped out, the Raiders dropped out, the Knights dropped out. There were plenty of teams that had dropped out of that race too in that period, but it looks like, for me at least, a very much so two-horse race between the Bulldogs and the Melbourne Storm. Where do I think that Stefano Utoikamanu should go? Personally, I think he should go to Melbourne. Which one of these two clubs is going to give him the bag? Which two of these clubs are going to give him more money? You'd probably say the Bulldogs. They've got a bit of a war chest, you'd think, over there, even though they've signed all of these stars. I feel like Phil Gould saved up the war chest. He's got some of these guys on cheap, and they'd be able to give him a big coin. Now, when I say big coin, as I said, there is no chance that either of these clubs are giving him the $1 million contract, but I definitely can see a world where he does get at least 600, 700, potentially 750 at either one of these clubs, more likely so the Bulldogs. I think that if I'm Melbourne and I'm offering him a contract at the moment, it's probably sitting a little bit more around the range of 600, 550, because that's where I think Stefano is at right now. Yes, he's played Origin, and people think that if you've played Origin, and particularly over the past few years, players that have played Origin, people think that once you've played Origin, you have to be up here playing at your very best all of the time. It's just not the case. Players aren't like that. Players don't just all of a sudden you played Origin, oh my God, you have to be the best. Otherwise, if you're a 5 out of 10, a 6 out of 10, a 7 out of 10, you're playing terrible and you're in bad form. Stefano's been at around a 6 and a 7 out of 10 every single week for the past few weeks. He's been playing decent football. He hasn't been getting the meterage that you've seen from Adam Fanua-Blake and Mitch Barnett and Payne Haas and Paddy Carrigan. And that's simply because he isn't on that level yet. He is nowhere near that level yet, and I think he's got a few years to go before he gets to that level. He is still young. He has still got a lot to learn. He only came into the competition a few years ago. He has still got a long way to go before he gets to that level or even close. So, look, that's no disrespect to Stefano Utoikamanu, but I think people just need to pull him off the pedestal of Origin. Yes, he's played Origin. He's played 1 or 2 games of State of Origin football, and in those times, he deserved to be selected. He was playing good footy, but when you play Origin, it doesn't mean that you have to be a 9 out of 10 every single week in the games following. It's just simply not the case. He's been playing decent football. He deserves a decent contract, but he's not a $1 million player, and people certainly shouldn't put him on the pedestal of being a $1 million player. And I think that the manager has sort of gotten into his head a little bit, saying, you played Origin, you're an Origin front rower, you should be getting the asking price of $1 million front rower. It's just not the case. I think that he's got to realize that as well, and I'm sure he has realized that now, being in the market for a little while. Look, whatever club gets him, I'm sure that either club will definitely benefit from him. I think he'll get the most out of being at Melbourne Storm under Craig Bellamy and just learning the ropes and really just getting a real understanding of a team environment and what the culture is down there. I feel like he's going to flourish there. Bulldogs, I think he could flourish there with the playing group that they're building. I think he's going to get more money if he goes to the Dogs. I imagine they'd be offering him a little bit more. And I just feel like with the players that they've got over there, the culture that they're building, he can become a part of that culture and mold into that culture. And I think that he could also flourish in that environment as well. As I said, though, I think he'd go better at Melbourne, but I'm keen to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments, where do you think Stefano Utoikamanu should land, the Bulldogs or the Melbourne Storm? Let me know what you think. And then obviously the other bit of news that we got today was about Brian To'o. Brian To'o, Bizza, he has reportedly been in quiet conversations with Penrith in regards to a release. Now, Matt Cameron, the CEO over there, has come out and said, well, that is not the case. That is not the case. He hasn't requested a release. He hasn't been talking to other clubs. He pretty much shut it down straight away. And look, that's fair enough. And I think that even if it was the case, you'd shut it down anyway. And the fact that this has come out of Penrith is huge. Such a great establishment now, a premiership side. the fact that this sort of stuff is coming out of Penrith is quite bizarre, in my opinion. But look, this is the situation we're in. Bizza reportedly in quiet conversations with other clubs. And look, if he was, I'm not saying he is, but if he was, I'd understand it. And I think everyone else would understand it as well. Not from the perspective of he's in a premiership winning side, so why the hell is he talking to other clubs? You can't think like that. He's lost Spencer Leniu to the Roosters. He's lost his best mate and critter who he's played since he was 13 with to the Bulldogs. Terrell May came out of that system a while back ago. If they were good mates when he was in there. Obviously, he's gone to the Roosters now as well, but he came out of that side a long time ago. He was at the Tigers before he was at the Roosters, Terrell May. There's a few guys out of that system. You got Taruva and Luai both going to the Tigers next year. There is a few guys coming out of that system, and that has been over the past few years. And a lot of them have been really close with Brian To'o. And you'd imagine that would have a bit of a toll on him. I think that it is number one priority to instill confidence in him, where the team is headed. And I'm sure, he's quite confident in where the Panthers are headed for sure. I think this is more so just the fact that if this is happening, and this is all pure speculation, I think it's more so the fact that, Brian To'o, he's got a lot of his mates leaving and have left, over the past few years. It's just about playing with his mates. I think, I think that Brian To'o is definitely going to see out the rest of his contract. For me personally, I don't think that any of this chat is real. But what I am saying is, if it was, you'd have a little bit of understanding as to why this chat is occurring, because he does miss his mates. And anyone in that situation would as well. If you're playing with all of your mates and one by one they started going to other clubs, you'd sort of, miss your mate. You'd miss playing with those guys. You'd miss playing with those close mates, especially in Bizza's case where he's grown up with a lot of those boys. If they just start leaving one by one, you're going to miss those boys. You're going to want to play with those boys again. And look, he does play with them in State of Origin level, but you are going to miss playing with those guys. And I think that, just coming out of the Origin period as well, getting a taste of what it's like to play with those guys, I think that would be a little bit of a factor that might, push this situation or, make this happen, obviously, with him sort of starting to, talk to other clubs and been reportedly giving quiet permission to talk to other clubs as well. As I said, don't think it's happening. Don't think it's real. I think he'll see out the rest of his contract. But as I said, you can understand where this would be coming from if it was true and if it is true. But yeah, look, keen to see where Bizza ends up. I could not imagine him out of a Penrith jersey. It'd be crazy to see him anywhere else. I think that top landing spots for Bizza would obviously be the Dogs. I'd love to see him end up there. You've obviously got Addo Carr in that left wing spot at the moment, so he'd probably have to go to the right side. You'd push Kiraz into the centres potentially, or, if Addo Carr, or depending on what he decides to do as well going into the next few years as well, Bizza might be the succession plan to Addo Carr as well. I don't think Addo Carr is actually that old. I think he's like 28, 29, to be honest, Josh Addo Carr. I might be getting that completely wrong, and I imagine I am. Looking it up now, Josh Addo Carr, he is 29. Yeah, so he's not that old, Josh Addo Carr. He's not as old as people think. So he's got plenty of years left. Yes, he's had injuries, but, he's actually got quite a few years left. So, yeah, Bizza probably to go into the right wing if he does go to the Dogs, but I'd love to see him there at the Dogs. I think that he'd fit in very well. Kiraz goes into the centres. You have a centre pairing of Critter and Kiraz, and then the wingers of To'o and obviously Addo Carr. And just the meterage that these guys are going to get out of their own end would be absolutely insane. Imagine, you have a set where Brian To'o, Stephen Crichton, and Kiraz are coming out of their own end on first, second, and third tackle. I mean, that's just absolutely insane. Then you've obviously got the Tigers, where obviously Romy is going along with Taruva, going over there with those boys. The back line is not confirmed. Yeah, as we've said a number of times on the podcast, full strength. We don't know what this back line is going to look like or what it does look like full strength. I think that Bizza would be the only guy when he comes into that side that would be locked into a spot in the back line. Everyone else is just under question. I think that's something the Tigers need to, sort out over the next few weeks. They cannot keep changing this side going into the rest of this year and then going into next year as well. I'm sick of seeing this side change every single week. They've definitely got to keep a little bit of consistency, and they've been unlucky with injury here and there. but there has been a lot of changes that sort of hadn't need to happen because players are just figuring out defensive combinations and stuff like that. There just hasn't really needed to be a change after 1 week of a combination. And I think that it's just, it's also Benji just warming into that coaching role as well, warming into coaching life, testing things out. And I think that a lot of assistants would probably be talking to Benji as well, to saying, hey, look, you don't really need to make all of these changes straight away and stuff like that. But yeah, anyway, back to Bizza. I could talk about football and go on an absolute loophole for the next 50 minutes, but I'll save you. Bizza, I think, would fit in at the Tigers for sure, next to Romy on that left-hand side. Oh, chef's kiss. You chuck a Starford Torre or an Adam Dewey on that left-hand side. Oh, my God. Then you've got, obviously, Lockie Galvin to roam down that way as well. Oh, okay. Moving on. Getting rugby league horny, tell you that for free. In terms of other landing spots for him, those would be the only two that make sense if the reasoning is true. If he just wants to go and play with his mates, you'd think that it'd just be Bulldogs and obviously the Tigers as well. Potentially Roosters to go over and play with Spencer Leniu. But they've got a lot of shit to sort out, and I think that, Bizza would just be another headache a bit. I'm not saying that Bizza wouldn't fit into that lineup. You'd obviously figure out a way, but they've got Supo there at the moment, who's just re-signed for 2 years. You've got Dom Young, who's the future there on the wing. Brian Toto would have to wait another 2 years to get a deal there at the Roosters. And, I think, and look, I have no idea, but it seems like he's closer to Critter than he is to Spencer Leniu. So I think that his priority would be the Dogs over the Roosters. But, hey, look, Brian Toto of the Roosters would be absolutely chaotic. Brian Toe and Dom Young wing combination with Teddy out there at the back, or Manu out there at the back in the future if he does come back from rugby union. Crazy stuff. Keen to see if there's any truth to this at all. Obviously, they reported it on Channel 9 tonight as well. That just came up on the news tonight. But yeah, keen to see what happens. I'm not sure if there is any truth to it, as I said, but you could sort of understand if there was, playing with your mates leaving the club, you sort of miss them. And, during the origin period, when you do play with them, it sort of starts to bubble up a few memories and stuff like that. You could see why this would happen. Let me know your thoughts. Is Bizza going to leave the Panthers? Where would he go? What club makes the most sense to you guys? Let me know in the comments. And make sure to subscribe. Become a part of the big LEZ'S League community if you haven't already. We will see you guys in the next one.